Oh, fuck. It's not too hot. That mouth a little bit. So I've been sat at home, racking the old noggin. What can David do in his spare time? Liam's back at work, sort of. I still don't have a job at all. The YouTube channel needs more content. Well, it doesn't. We release a video every Friday. But it needs a little bit more variation. We already have 3 series up. Old Maybe Not Gold, Brotal Recall Big Guns, Bro vs Bro. So I thought, why not introduce something else into the mix? I mean, it's either this or continue my home workouts. Or continue to eat like a dickhead. So, here we go. Introducing the series. Was it good though? Without any more fucking about, I'm David. I'm half of Brotal Recall. Cue the intro. Welcome to the first episode in a series called Was It Good Though? In this series, I'll be presenting you with the game, breaking it down for gameplay, giving you the unbiased facts of everything that it included, and then giving you a very personal opinion on how it ended. Generally, that's how it's going to go. If I'm excited about something, you'll probably hear it all the way through the video. If I'm not excited about something, it will fucking show. On the first episode of Was It Good Though? We are going to review the game Exhumed. Why not add to the already saturated market of video game reviews within the depths of YouTube? Exhumed is the Doom clone. We figured we'd do a review first because not a lot of people have heard about this game, and I thought it'd be good to try and get it out there to show everyone what the game had to offer, how it was different from all the other Doom clones, how it's the best first-person shooter of its generation back then. If you haven't heard of Exhumed, don't beat yourself up because it's one of those things that flew under the radar amongst everything else that was coming out at the time. There were various different versions of this game. You had the MS-DOS version known as Powerslave, you then had the Sega Saturn version, and you had the PS1 version. We'll save confusion from the get-go. I am telling you about the PS1 version, not the Sega Saturn version or the MS-DOS version. I'm also not here to give you a full history of Powerslave, when it started, when it ended, who made it, where did it release, where did it go, what happened to it. I am here today to tell you all about the PS1 version and maybe give you 1 or 2 differences. Essentially, I'm here to tell you, was it good though? First things first.
The story!
I know what you're thinking, a story in a 96 first-person shooter is about as welcome as story in porn, which is precisely what John Carmack said when someone approached him with the idea of having a story within Doom. Personally, I like a story-driven game. If you're going to go around shooting things, I like to feel there's a purpose for it. The story is set in Karnak, Egypt. Essentially what you get is an opening where a book is flicking its pages and giving you various images, and you've got this voiceover telling you about what's happening.
During the time of the pharaohs, the city of Karnak was a shining example of civilization. However, something has gone terribly wrong. Unknown forces have seized the city, and great turmoil is spreading into neighboring lands.
Forces unknown.
Fierce alien creatures.
This unknown threat
starts
tearing through Egypt like a wildfire and fucking people up.
Devoured the women and children and made slaves of the men. Many of the unfortunate victims were skinned alive or brutally dismembered.
And then they decide that raping and pillaging an entire civilization is enough, so they start stealing their pharaoh's dead bodies as well.
Even the mummified body of the great King Ramses was unearthed and taken away.
Leaders from all over the world start sending in forces to try and neutralise the situation. They all fail. And just as the last line of defence comes in, you're shot down over the city of Karnak, and while everyone else dies, your character is the one that survives.
Ready to accomplish your mission, praying to return alive.
You are now stranded alone in the middle of nowhere with a machete and a fucking bandana. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is make your way through all of these cities, civilizations, claiming everything that's yours, fighting off the bad guy, and claiming back Ramses' corpse? The story was lax. But at the end of the day, civilization depends on you. You better start
fucking some people up.
So from the get-go, when you land within the game, you're opened up to a map. The only thing that's available to you at the moment is the Tomb of Ramses. You can just about see all around you all of these other different little map areas, settlements, whatever you want to call them. And the whole point of this map is to kind of navigate yourself to the new areas that you may open up with a different artifact, or another area you have to backtrack to be able to get a new power-up. The first place you get dropped into is the Tomb of Ramses. This is also where you get your first gun. The game states it's a pistol, but let's face it, it's a fucking revolver. It's slightly better than your machete, and you're not going to want want to use this as a go-to gun later on in the game. The handgun is a weapon you go to when you run out of ammo in all of your other weapons. This is also where you'll be introduced to your first enemy, blue scorpions. As aforementioned, I will compare this to the Sega Saturn version. There's not much of a difference, except for blue scorpions, you will be introduced to red spiders. Personally, I think they look horrifying. I'd rather stick to the blue scorpions. And they make a fantastic sound when you kill them. Once you've gone to the end of Tomb of Ramses, you find his sarcophagus and his little spirit all floats out of the top of it to give you pretty much everything you need to know about the story, where you're going, what you need to do.
Seek out the 6 treasured artifacts, and once that door will find you.
Cool little fact, if you listen to the entirety of Ramses' speeches, you will get a full health power up by the end of it. You'll then move on to Karnak. Karnak is essentially the crossroads within the middle of the game for the first portion of it. You'll be coming back here a lot. Karnak is the place that will lead you on to all the other areas of the game. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. In almost every single level you go into, you will encounter these bastards. The Anubis warrior is a bit like the imps from Doom. They fire blue bolts at you. They're a pain in the ass, but it won't take much to get rid of them. The third level you'll encounter is Karnak Sanctuary. Karnak Sanctuary is where you'll pick up your second gun, the M60, the go-to big boy of the entire game. It's big, it's clunky, it does eat through your ammo, but it also deals a fair bit of fucking damage. And the sound that thing makes. The only thing more satisfying than the sound of that gun is hearing a blue scorpion explode after you fire that weapon. This level you'll also pick up your first artifact, the Sandals of Incumbit. You get sandals. They allow you to jump higher, they allow you to progress to other parts of the game. In this level you'll be introduced to the Bird of Prey. Moving on, Sobek Pass is sort of a filler level, you kind of have to go into it to carry on, but this is where you first get introduced to the fucking fireballs, which are just a pain in the ass in general. You also get introduced to these flying moth ball bags. They're fuckers. There's not much more to say about that. Once you finish Sobek Pass, you move on to Sobek Mountain Shrine. This is where you'll collect your second artifact, Sobek Mask. The Sobek Mask is essentially scuba gear for your face. You don't have a tank, you don't have any pipes, you literally have this thing that you just plant directly on your face. The Sobek Mask allows you to dive into water and swim for a lot longer than you would have done without it, allowing you to progress to different parts of the game.
Travel south now through Karnak,
where you can then access a water area to then swim underwater to gain access to another camel. Did I not mention, camels are your main transport in this game. You will find one at the end of every level, you'll find one at the start of every level. We will then move on to the Ammon Mines. Ammon Mines is where you pick up your third weapon, the Ammon Bomb. The Ammon Bomb is an okay weapon, but it's also a massive liability when it comes to picking off targets. Chuck this thing into a room full of scorpions, great. Chuck this thing from a distance at an enemy, great. Use this thing against a boss, great. Accidentally launch this thing in a wall when you're facing it, you lose your face. The Ammon Bomb is pretty much designed to get rid of a false wall to make you progress to a different part of the level. Once you finish the Ammon Mines, you'll move on to Set Palace.
Fuck you!
Fuck this level. It introduces the most irritating fucking enemy of the game. Scratch that. Second most irritating enemy of the game. You're also presented with an absolute maze of areas that you have to jump over, navigate to, blow walls out of, navigate around fireballs, navigate around lava, and it introduces the first timed exit where you flip a switch. You then have to do this weird kamikaze run where you have to go all the way around all these falling fucking bridges to then arrive back at the other wall that you will not jump over first time because the jump mechanic's a piece of shit. Attempt to jump while running downstairs, you will fall flat on your fucking face into a pool of lava. After Set Palace, you'll move on to Set Arena. This is where you'll encounter your first boss battle with the Set. Yes, the Set. S-E-T. This thing has many eyes, many legs, it runs around, it claws at you, it fires weird silhouettes at you, launch grenades in the M60 at it, do your strafe and spinny thing, you'll be just fine. By the end of the boss, you are rewarded with another artifact, the Shawl of Isis. I'm sure they didn't think of the connotations that would have later on in life. The Shawl of Isis allows you to glide to the destination you need to go to. Upon completing the boss level, you'll return to Tomb of Ramses. He will then tell you where to go next with your Shawl of Isis. Off you fuck to the Ammon Mines. In the Ammon Mines, where you first collected the Ammon Bomb, there is a huge crater in the floor where you then have to float all the way down to the bottom where you will find your camel. After doing this, you'll find yourself in the Cavern of Peril, where you'll find your fourth weapon, the Flamethrower. It's shit. Okay, that might be a little bit unfair, but the whole point of the flamethrower is to get rid of mummies. The flamethrower runs out of fuel quite quickly, but if you manage to catch, for instance, a mummy on fire or a moth, they will then continue to burn for a prolonged amount of time, eventually exploding into dust. After the Cavern of Peril, you move on to the Nile Gorge. The Nile Gorge is quite a complex level, requiring a lot of searching for keys, a lot of manoeuvring fireballs, up and down levels, left and right, backwards and forwards. Fucking hell, it goes on. There's a lot to do within this level. After completing the Nile Gorge, you'll be rewarded by moving on to the Toth Treasure Requillery. Requillery? For the sake of my sanity, it's Toth Treasure. I'm leaving the last word out. In this level, we meet the most irritating fucking enemy of the entire game. You remember how I said the mummy was the second most irritating enemy of the game? Well, welcome to the first. It's a Catwoman thing. It's essentially Catwoman. No, not that one. This thing is the epitome of When you first encounter these things, you'll find them cross-armed, set in stone, but the second you enter the room, they'll jump into life, come screeching towards you, and claw your fucking eyes out. Once you enter a few rounds into them, they will disappear. That is right, they will evaporate into thin air. Will they appear in the same room? Will they appear 50 minutes down the line? Who the fuck knows? In this level, you also find your fourth artifact, the protective anklets that allow you to walk on lava and acid, and once again, like all the other artifacts are designed in the game to do, allow you to progress to a different area of the game. Off you fuck, back to Karnak Sanctuary. In Karnak Sanctuary, there is a river of lava which you are now able to walk on to progress to the next area of the game. Beyond this, we reach Heket Marsh. What a fucking name. Here you receive your fifth weapon, the Cobra Staff. Jesus Christ, it sounds like a shitty Limp Bizkit album. The Cobra Staff, there's not really much to explain about this weapon. It's a staff, it looks like a cobra, it shoots homing green cobras. Heket Marsh is just irritating to the point of irresponsible. It's not that it's a hard level, it's just that there's a lot of backtracking, toing and froing, and these fucking cat women just keep jumping up out of nowhere. After Heket Marsh, we reach the Sunken Palace. Fuck this level also. Underwater levels are traditionally bollocks, and this is no exception. Moving on. Deserted Slave Camp. Fuck this level! Deserted Slave Camp is long, it's complicated, and there are just particular areas that you get to, you are stuck in a constant maze not knowing where the fuck you're going next. By the end of it, you'll just relieve the levels over. Selkis Path. You've got a lot of lava, you've got a lot of enemies crowding your area, it's those weird fucking mummy guys again. There's also this ridiculous part where you have to hover all the way through this maze of where you're allowed a little bit of breath to allow yourself to jump onto a grassy knoll to then continue your hovering on. I realise this video is about how good this game is, but fucking hell, there are some levels that are really questionable. After Selkis Path, you reach Selkis Arena. Selkis Arena is your second boss fight. It's a scorpion woman that fires projectiles out of her stinger. A lot like the previous boss, once you've defeated this boss, you'll receive another artifact. The Killmart Scepter is something that allows you to pass through green shields, enter an area that you couldn't get to before, and then progress on to the next stage of the game. The Magma Fields! I mean, Magma Fields just sounds like something you don't want to visit. If the Magma Field's one of the 7 wonders of the world, you would not want to visit it. Sound like a fucking backpacker doing their gap year. Ooh, last year on my gap year I visited the Magma Fields of Egypt. That sounds really fucking awful. See ya? In the Magma Fields, you receive another weapon. The Ring of Ra was good in theory, but absolutely awful in execution. Imagine taking a box full of bouncy balls, dousing them in gasoline, setting them on fire, and then unleashing them in your living room. This level will introduce the lava monsters to you. These things are usually avoided if you can exit the room quite quickly. They're not really necessary to dispatch of, but sometimes they do allow doors to open. They will rise up, they will fire a lot of fireballs at you, they will then go back down into the lava. After the Magma Fields, we move on to Horus Peak. It's incredibly entertaining. It's probably one of the most ambitious levels in the game. It's not that hard, but at the same time, it really isn't that easy. But at the end of all of this, you receive another artifact. The Horus Feather is a lot like the Shawl of Isis. I cannot get used to that name. But unlike the Shawl, it allows you to levitate as opposed to float to your destination. This Horus Feather, well, as always, will take you back to the Tomb of Ramses. He'll dribble on about something.
The Queen of the Killmart Empire is furious with your doings and will tear your body to pieces.
He will then point you in the direction of the Toth Treasure place, at which point you'll progress to another area of that level to then use the Horus Feather. This will now lead you on to the Canyons of Chaos. Oh dear God. Fuck this level. fuck it with every inch of my body. I'm not even going to go into great detail. If you're playing the game, or you plan on playing in the game, I hope you get to this point and go, hey, this has been a pretty enjoyable journey so far, I wonder what this level's got for me. Holy fuck, I'm out. Canyons of Chaos will also introduce you to a new weapon, the Sacred Manacle. Essentially, you just put on a big bracelet that allows your hands to be able to charge up and shoot lightning bolts out of it. After the Canyons of Chaos, we reach the Killmart Colony. And I cannot stress this enough. Killmart Colony was designed to test one thing, your anger threshold. It's also the first time you're introduced to the Killmart, the
Unknown forces.
described at the beginning of the game.
Fierce alien creatures.
When I see the Killmarts, they kind of just remind me of a cockroach that got infected with nuclear waste, grew big and strong, and acquired space guns. In this level, you're also introduced to the Death Bolts. These death bolts are blue orbs that fire out of the walls at rapid speeds. One touches you, it's game over, back to the beginning of the level. At the end of the level, you're presented with many blue death bolts. You kind of have to weave up and down. I know in first-person games, you are the person, but when you're looking through the eyes of this guy, it's not as if the camera is where his head is, his camera is more where his chest is. So you have to navigate where his feet are as well when you're levitating over death bolts, and where his head is going to be when you're coming down to go under them. After the Killmart Colony, we are given the Killmart Haunt. So essentially the Killmart Haunt is that place that you can breathe a little bit. You have to relinquish all of the artifacts that you have collected throughout the game. Once you've given up all your artifacts, you then walk into a portal, at which point you're taken to a new level. And here is where you'll be introduced to the Killmart Queen. Fuck knows what this thing is. I'm telling you, we can't decipher it. We just don't know. The Killmart Queen. Make of it as you will? Question mark? But he will then proceed to start firing meatballs with teeth at you. That is literally the best explanation I can come up with. Meatballs with teeth. He will start bursting into flames, exploding, and then you'll be left with this little pulp of red on the floor. As with all the bosses, you're going to look at this and go, oh, I guess that's all I left behind because I fucked him up so badly. Incorrect. What now happens is that this dude turns into a weird caterpillar, spiky, dragony thing. He's just going to bounce about like a little prick, coming towards you, charging you, and being just a nuisance. Remember those Ammon bombs? Yep, they're the ones you're going to use to fuck this guy up. Something I haven't mentioned while describing the levels to you is that throughout the game you also have 8 transmitter pieces that are scattered about the place. They're not incredibly important for the progression of the story, but they are important for the outcome of the ending of the game.
Unfortunately, you have failed to assemble all of the pieces to your communication device. Your people are unaware that you are still alive.
If you go back to Ramses without the all 8 transmitter pieces, you will end up being locked in his tomb with him.
The stone lid of the sarcophagus closes above you and seals your final breath of air.
At which point you will die, at which point
The Killmart alien race has returned to successfully wipe out all human existence on Earth. Your remains are excavated, put on public display, and studied as a rare icon of the long-lost human past.
Bad ending. If you manage to collect all 8 transmitter pieces, the back wall behind Ramses will blow open and you'll then be introduced into a huge maze where you have to fight your way through. Transmitter pieces have allowed your other comrades to find you and airlift you out of there.
Let's get the hell out of here.
At this point you're given another outro where it tells you you've successfully killed out the Killmart species
And you become king of the world.
the good ending! A lot like the transmitters, there's something else that you can collect throughout the course of the game, and these are hidden for a reason. The creators of the game wanted to put themselves into it, in the versions of Team Dolls. They are essentially mini sarcophaguses that you could collect throughout the game that have their faces on them. Collecting a certain amount would give you a certain power up.
Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Collecting your first amount of Team Dolls would give you Dolphin Mode. Dolphin mode would allow you to leap out of the water at great heights and once again reach other parts of the game that you couldn't get to before. And in collecting a certain amount of more team dolls, you would receive vulture mode. Some of the other things I really loved about this game were their use of the sound effects. You have the various different gun sounds. And the soundtrack alone. I think even if you didn't want a game remade like this for any of the other reasons I've spelt out before, imagine getting Mick Gordon to come back like he did on the new Do games to do the soundtrack for this. And let's face it, we live in the era of remakes. Doom's 2016 reboot should be evidence enough that games like this need to be remade. Depending on whether a company could get the license from Lobotomy Software to be able to produce this remake would probably be the biggest problem we'd face. And let's face it, if the company doesn't exist anymore, search out the license, fucking make it. Id Software, I'm looking at you. And honestly, if you have access to an old PS1 or a PS2 or even an emulator, this copy of Exhumed can be found on eBay for next to nothing. So yeah, was it good though? Yeah, it was. That's all I have to offer. Thanks for watching.